Welcome to this week's edition of Mountain Outhouse. I'm your host, Jamil Curry. This is the craziest shit to happen in running this week. We'll be touching upon the latest fashion trends to hit the world of ultra running, which race is truly the toughest in the world, and go to our first ever Outhouse correspondent, who is covering a real-life ultramarathon in Colorado. The latest ultra running fashion craze is here, and it is hot, hot, hot. Crop tops. This resurrected fashion item has come and gone over the years, but thanks most recently to an unexpected phenomenon known as the Walmsley effect, we have seen this trend explode onto the scene in a big way. Out are tank tops and going shirtless, and in are manly bare midriffs and moth holes. Scott Jurek made this one famous back in the late 90s with his streak of victories at the historic Western States 100. But the look firmly died in the mid-2000s. There were a couple of lone wolves sporting it over the years, including yours truly at the Zangray 50 in 2013, but the crop top re-emerged this past week in full force as a slew of elite ultra men were seen wearing it across the top of the Rocky Mountains. Tommy Rivers Pusey, Ryan Gelfie, and David Laney, who was also seen with the look in Squaw Valley back in June, all pulled off the crop. As this trend gets hotter, we have to ask ourselves, what's next? A solid beer belly to complement that bare mid? We can only hope. Hashtag, ha ha ha, he's got a beer belly. Another emerging trend we are keeping our eyes on also took place at Trans Rockies this week. Not to be outdone by these men sporting half shirts, Women's Trans Rockies champs Amanda Basham and Keely Henninger literally ripped theirs off as they crossed the finish line. Earlier this week, Badwater race director Chris Kostman announced he has recently been hired by Chinese ultra firm to help produce a trail 100-miler in Yunnan province, which is self-described as the best in the world and a must-do. It has not yet been confirmed whether the Mount Gaolagong Ultra will carry the Badwater name, but it hasn't stopped Kostman and his team from exporting that title well outside of Death Valley. With the Badwater Mustang Trail Run in Nepal, the Badwater Salton Sea in Southern California, and Badwater Cape Fear in North Carolina, we could well see the geographic term continue its global growth. If this trend continues across other big-name ultras, we could soon see the Hard Rock Beach Edition run along the Florida coast and the Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc Los Angeles Edition circumnavigating the Staples Center and the Hollywood Hills. Speaking of Badwater, which is the self-proclaimed the world's toughest foot race, according to their website, in covering 135 miles non-stop from Death Valley to Mount Whitney, California, it is the most demanding and extreme running race offered anywhere on the planet. A bold claim which brings us to a new segment we are calling the Mountain Outhouse Dump of the Week.
Dump of the Week.
Laying claim to being the toughest foot race on planet Earth is one of the most subjective things you can claim. What constitutes a tough race? Length, weather conditions, lack of markings, or aid stations, total climbing, technicality of the trail, etc. There are some extremely difficult events out there which are for sure in the running for toughest foot race, but others which inflate their numbers to seem tougher than they are. Red flags for me, quoting total elevation change, which makes an event seem harder than it is. For instance, a 50-miler with 20,000 feet of elevation change sounds pretty badass. But considering most 50Ks in the US Skyrunner series feature, at minimum, 10,000 feet of climb or 20,000 feet of change, it's not as tough as it seems. Let's face it, if your race has markings, aid stations, and real trail, or you are quoting total elevation change, it's not in the running for the world's toughest foot race. This segues into our next story, which is still developing. Pages. Lazarus Lake, the race director of the Barkley Marathons, has been scheming up a concept for what could put the nail in the coffin on the argument of world's toughest 100-mile foot race. Discussion on the Barkley Fall Classic Facebook group this week reveals Laz's plan to attempt to stage a 55-lap foot race on the Barkley's infamous Rat Jaw climb, from the prison to the fire lookout tower atop Frozen Head Peak. A 0.9-mile, briar-infested cross-country scramble with 2,000 feet of climb each lap. This race will literally any race claiming to be the world's toughest. With a proposed 110,000 feet of climb, of 220,000 feet of elevation change, for those of you who prefer to hype shit, the game is over. Oh, but Laz, I raise you my world's toughest, the Avalanche 100. 33 laps of the Avalanche chute in Silverton, Colorado. 120,000 feet of climb at an average elevation of 11,000 feet. Bring it. Shifting gears to another news segment we are calling, How is this not still a thing? Pedestrianism. Back in the late 1800s, the most popular spectating sport in the world was watching people walk in circles, aka old school ultra running, in various venues in Europe and the US. For instance, 6-day foot races held inside Madison Square Garden in New York in the 1800s drew daily attendance numbers of 10,000 plus, screaming insane fans watching men walk as many miles as they could around a 200-meter track. Imagine brass bands fiercely betting, lively competitors, doping scandals, and literally watching racers crumble into exhausted, smoldering wrecks. Sounds bloody brilliant, mate. The world's best battled for such awards as a diamond-studded 5-pound belt worth over $12,000 and would regularly win sums of money equal to over 100,000 of today's dollars. Well, the sport isn't totally dead, and for that story, we bring you our first correspondent coverage of a modern-day pedestrian affair taking place at the SILVERTON 1000 this weekend, where competitors are racing around the clock on a 1-mile loop. We go to Jam in the field. Jam?
Just stay tuned and just bear with me here. And I think I see someone coming. Yes, I see a runner. And here he's coming. Sir, how are you doing? Are you overheating? How are you handling the heat? Nice work, sir. Okay. They're focused, they're mentally in the game.
Well, thank you, Jam, for that compelling report. We'll have to check back next week to see the thrilling conclusion of that walk. It appears we have some additional correspondence from our guest contributor, Whiskey Man. Whiskey Man?
Jamil, I'm here at the SILVERTON 1000. It's gonna rain. I think it might snow. There's people, they're running. Back to you, Jamil.
We close out this week's news with Walmsley's close call. At the Bridger Ridge Run, an extremely technical mountain race in Montana, Walmsley had a big lead under course record pace when he became confused mid-race. Thinking he may have made another fateful wrong turn, he backtracked, only to find out he was actually on the correct route. He rallied to still come away with the win, but ultimately fell behind course record pace. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. If you have stories to share, tweet us, Mountain Outpost. Thanks for watching. Have a shitty week. Hashtag. Ha ha ha. He's got a beer belly. It has not yet been announced whether the Mount Gaologong. Now what do I do? Should I wear it? How do those girls do it? Badass. That's how. Damn, how do they do that? A bold claim, which brings us to a new segment we are calling it's like the Hulk. Here live at the site of the SILVERTON 1000.
Just brutal conditions out here. The athletes, they're overheating, so they've resorted to putting cold towels over their heads in an attempt to stave off these high temperatures. Can you see me? Oh, what a blessing, you guys. I've stumbled upon some wild fruit over here. Right on course.
America has all weather because we're free. And it's the SILVERTON 1000 behind me. There's freedom reigns. But back to you, Jamil.